All right, strap in everyone because we are diving straight into the heart of Tibetan Buddhism today.
Sounds intense.
Oh, it is. We're talking practices designed to unlock mystical experiences.
Like what kind of practices?
We're talking dream yoga, deity yoga, and even Dzogchen.
Dzogchen, now that's one I haven't heard much about.
Yeah, it's going to be a wild ride.
Well, I'm ready. Let's go.
Okay, so we've got a stack of sources here.
Oh, yeah.
Some are super dense and academic. Others are like surprisingly poetic. But they all point to this idea of using specific techniques to reach deeper states of consciousness.
It's really fascinating how many different approaches there are.
Yeah, and before we jump into the how, I'm curious about the why here.
The why?
Yeah, why are these mystical experiences so important in Tibetan Buddhism?
Well, it all comes back to the ultimate goal, right? Achieving enlightenment and liberation from suffering.
Okay, so that's the big picture, but how do these mystical experiences fit into that?
Think of them as signposts along the path. Yeah, they offer glimpses of a reality beyond our everyday perceptions, which can be incredibly motivating and insightful for practitioners.
So it's not just about having a mystical experience for the sake of it.
Right. It's about what you learn from it, how it changes your understanding, and how that propels you forward on the path.
Okay, so these experiences are valuable because of the insights they provide.
Exactly.
I like it.
And that's why these practices are approached with such discipline and structure.
Discipline and structure. It sounds kind of paradoxical.
How so?
Well, we often think of mystical experiences as spontaneous, unpredictable.
I see what you mean.
But you're saying they can be cultivated, almost like a skill.
In a way, yes. They're not random mystical happenings. They're carefully cultivated tools for growth.
Okay, so let's talk tools. Dream yoga keeps popping up in our research.
Dream yoga, one of my favorites.
It sounds almost too good to be true.
How so?
Mastering your dreams, having these vivid experiences, even facing your fears head on while you sleep.
Oh, it's definitely not a quick fix or anything.
Right, but what's the reality of this practice? How does it actually work?
Well, dream yoga is all about cultivating lucidity.
Lucidity.
Yeah, that awareness of dreaming while you're in the dream state.
So knowing that you're dreaming while you're in the dream.
Exactly. And when you have that awareness, it opens up a whole new world of possibilities.
Wow, I can imagine.
Imagine navigating the dreamscape consciously, interacting with symbols, and even transforming nightmares into sources of insight.
That would be incredible. Not just for sleep, but for how you approach your waking life too, right?
Absolutely. The skills you develop in dream yoga can have a profound impact on your waking state.
Like what kind of skills?
Well, for one, it can help you recognize the illusory nature of reality.
Okay, we're getting philosophical now.
A little bit, but think about it.
Okay.
If your mind can create an entire world while you're asleep, it makes you question what's real and what's constructed in your waking life too.
Whoa, okay, mind blown.
Right.
So dream yoga helps you see through the illusion, but I imagine there's more to it than that.
Oh, absolutely. There are so many different applications and techniques within dream yoga.
Like what?
Some traditions use it to explore past lives or access hidden knowledge.
Okay, hold on. Past lives and hidden knowledge. That's getting pretty out there, even for me.
I know, it can sound a bit far-fetched, but it's important to remember that these practices are embedded in a very different worldview than the one we typically encounter in the West.
So we need to be open to different possibilities, even if they challenge our current understanding of things.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm trying to keep an open mind here. But before we go too far down that rabbit hole, are there any downsides to dream yoga?
Downsides?
Or potential dangers?
It's important to remember that dream yoga isn't just about having fun in your dreams.
Right, it's not just lucid dreaming for entertainment.
It's a serious practice with its own set of challenges.
Like what kind of challenges?
Well, for one, maintaining lucidity can be incredibly difficult.
I can imagine.
It's like trying to hold on to a slippery bar of soap.
Uh-huh. I get the analogy.
And then there's the risk of misinterpreting what you experience in the dream state.
Okay, that makes sense. Dreams can be pretty symbolic and confusing.
Exactly. That's why dream yoga is traditionally done under the guidance of a teacher.
Right. Someone to help make sense of those experiences.
A teacher can help you stay grounded, interpret symbols, and navigate the more challenging aspects of the practice.
So not something to just try on your own after watching a documentary then?
You could try, but without proper guidance, it's easy to get lost in the dream world or misinterpret your experiences.
Right. I can see how that could be problematic.
A teacher can provide the context, the techniques, and the support you need to practice safely and effectively.
Guidance seems to be a recurring theme here.
It is.
It's like these practices have the potential to be incredibly powerful but also potentially misleading without the proper context.
You hit the nail on the head.
And that brings us to another fascinating practice, Deity Yoga.
Oh, yeah, this one's interesting.
Deity Yoga definitely conjures up some interesting imagery. Our sources talk about visualizing yourself as an enlightened being, which sounds intense, to say the least.
It can be intense, but it's also incredibly powerful.
So how does it work? Do you actually try to become a god or goddess or something?
No, not at all. The key here is symbolism.
Symbolism.
You're not literally trying to become a deity. Instead, you're working with archetypal energies and qualities represented by these deities.
So it's more like embodying specific qualities.
Precisely.
Like compassion, wisdom, that sort of
Exactly. Let's take the example of Avalokiteshvara, the bodhisattva of compassion.
Avalokiteshvara.
Yeah, he's often depicted with 1,000 arms, representing his boundless capacity for compassion.
1,000 arms, wow.
So in Deity Yoga, you might visualize yourself as Avalokiteshvara, but you're not worshiping an external deity.
So it's not about prayer or devotion in that sense?
Not in the traditional Western sense, no.
Okay, I'm following.
It's about tapping into the energy of compassion within your own being, cultivating it through visualization and meditation.
So using the image of Avalokiteshvara as a way to connect with and amplify the quality of compassion within yourself.
Exactly. It's a powerful technique for personal growth.
I can see how that would be effective, but even if it's not about worshiping external gods, isn't there a risk of getting caught up in the imagery?
That's always a possibility, which is why, once again, the guidance of a qualified teacher is crucial.
It's that guidance theme again.
It's essential.
They can help you understand the symbolism, avoid misinterpretations, and ensure you're using the practice for genuine inner transformation.
Exactly. It's not about getting lost in the fantasy of being a deity. It's about using those powerful images to unlock your own potential for compassion, wisdom, and so on.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this all fits together.
Good.
We've got dream yoga working with the dream state, deity yoga utilizing visualization. It's all about using these different tools to cultivate specific qualities and ultimately move toward that goal of enlightenment.
That's a great summary. And it highlights the richness and diversity of Tibetan Buddhist practices.
And one that keeps popping up in our sources is the idea that these practices, as powerful as they are just part of a much larger picture.
The larger picture, yes.
What else is involved in this path, beyond the specific techniques we've been discussing?
Well, first and foremost, there's ethical conduct.
Ethical conduct.
Tibetan Buddhism emphasizes compassion, nonviolence, and right action as essential for spiritual progress.
So it's not enough to just meditate and visualize.
Right. It's about aligning your actions with your aspirations.
So you actually have to live your life in alignment with these principles.
Exactly. Ethical conduct creates a solid foundation for deeper practice.
Like building a house on a strong foundation.
Exactly. And then, of course, there's meditation, which is central to cultivating focus, awareness, and ultimately those mystical experiences we've been discussing.
Right. It all starts with that inner stillness and clarity.
And the ability to observe your own mind without getting caught up in its endless chatter.
That sounds easier said than done.
It takes practice, but it's definitely possible.
And what about studying the teachings, the philosophy behind all of this? Is that a big part of the path too?
Absolutely. Understanding the Buddhist teachings provides context and meaning for the practices.
So it's not just about doing the practices blindly. It's about understanding why you're doing them and how they fit into a larger framework.
Exactly. It's like having a map to guide you through the territory you're exploring.
Okay, so we've got ethical conduct, meditation, study, and then these specialized practices like dream yoga and deity yoga.
That's a good overview.
Sounds pretty comprehensive.
It is, and it's evolved over centuries with different lineages and schools adding their own unique perspectives and techniques.
And we haven't even touched on Dzogchen yet.
Oh, Dzogchen.
Which our sources describe as like this incredibly profound path, almost like the ultimate path in Tibetan Buddhism.
It is often considered the pinnacle of Tibetan Buddhist practice.
So what makes Dzogchen so special?
Well, it's a more direct path, focused on recognizing the true nature of mind.
The true nature of mind. What does that even mean?
It's said to be pure awareness, free from all limitations.
Okay, pure awareness, free from limitations.
It's a state of being that's incredibly difficult to describe in words.
I can imagine.
But essentially, it's about recognizing the inherent freedom and wakefulness of your own mind.
So instead of working with the dream state or visualizing yourself as a deity, you're going straight to the source, recognizing that pure awareness that's already there.
That's the essence of Dzogchen.
Wow, that's powerful stuff.
It's a path of radical self-discovery, where you strip away all concepts and beliefs to experience the true nature of reality directly.
Okay, I think I need a minute to process all of this.
Take your time. It's a lot to take in.
But before we dive too deep into Dzogchen, I'm curious, how does it fit into the broader context of Tibetan Buddhism? We've got dream yoga working with the dream state, deity yoga using visualization. Where does Dzogchen fit in?
It's often described as the path of self-liberation,
Self-liberation.
where you recognize the inherent freedom and wakefulness of your own mind.
So it's like bypassing all the other practices and going straight to the heart of the matter.
In a way, yes, it's about cutting through the illusions and recognizing the ultimate reality that's always present.
Okay, that makes sense.
But it's important to remember that all of these practices are interconnected and can support each other.
So they're like different paths leading to the same destination.
That's a great way to put it. And the path you choose will depend on your individual needs and inclinations.
I'm really starting to get a sense of the depth and complexity of this tradition.
There's so much to explore.
We've covered a lot of ground already. Dream yoga, deity yoga, now Dzogchen.
And we've only just scratched the surface.
They all seem pretty different on the surface, though.
They are distinct practices, but ultimately they all aim at the same thing, realizing the true nature of reality and the mind.
So they're like different trails leading to the same mountain peak.
That's a great analogy. They can also be seen as complementary. Dream yoga works with the dream state. Deity yoga utilizes visualization. And Dzogchen emphasizes direct recognition.
So each offers a different perspective instead of tools for this journey of self-discovery.
Exactly. And that highlights the richness and diversity of Tibetan Buddhist practices. But it's crucial to remember that these practices are just one part of a much larger path.
Okay, I'm hooked. What else is involved in this path, beyond the practices we've talked about? What else is in this bigger picture?
Well, we've talked about ethical conduct as that foundation, right? Like aligning your actions with those principles of compassion and nonviolence.
Right.
It's not just about what you do on the cushion during meditation, you know?
It's about how you move through the world.
Exactly. Yeah, it's about living in a way that's congruent with your spiritual aspirations.
So ethical conduct, it's like setting the stage for those more advanced practices.
That's a great way to put it, yeah.
It's like building a stable base before you start constructing a skyscraper. You know?
I like that analogy, yeah. A strong foundation is essential.
And then, of course, there's meditation.
Yes. Meditation.
Which is so central to all of this. It's how you cultivate the focus, the awareness, the mental discipline.
Right. It's the training ground for the mind.
Yeah, it's needed to really engage with these practices effectively.
Exactly. And to experience those deeper states of consciousness we've been talking about.
Right. It's about quieting the mind to create space for those deeper experiences to kind of emerge and come forward.
Exactly. Yeah. It's about creating that inner stillness and clarity.
We touched on study earlier, but I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Study, yes.
What role do the Buddhist teachings actually play in all of this?
It's like getting a crash course in the nature of reality, the mind, and the path to liberation.
A crash course.
Yeah, it provides the context, the meaning, and the guidance for the practices.
So it's not just about doing the practices blindly. You're saying it's important to understand the why behind them.
Exactly. Yeah, it's about understanding the principles that underpin the practices.
Okay, that makes sense.
Think of it as the instruction manual for your spiritual journey.
Okay, so ethical conduct lays the groundwork. Meditation provides that focus, and study gives you the map.
I like that. Yeah, a good roadmap is essential.
Then you add in these specialized practices like dream yoga and deity yoga and Dzogchen. It's a pretty intricate system.
It is, yeah, but also incredibly beautiful and profound.
It seems like there's a lot of emphasis on the teacher-student relationship, too.
Oh, absolutely. The teacher is an indispensable guide on this path.
We've touched on that a few times already, but why is that relationship so important in this tradition?
Because these practices are powerful, and like any powerful tool, they need to be handled with care and understanding.
Right. It's not something you just pick up and try on your own.
A qualified teacher can provide personalized instruction, help you avoid pitfalls, and offer support along the way.
Yeah, they've been there, done that, and they can help you navigate the tricky parts.
Exactly. It's like having a seasoned guide to help you navigate a challenging but ultimately rewarding terrain.
So it's that guidance again?
Guidance is essential.
Making sure you're using these practices for genuine growth and not getting lost in the weeds.
Right. The teacher helps you stay on track and make sure you're heading in the right direction.
Which brings me to a question that's been kind of bubbling up for me as we've been talking.
Oh, yeah.
We've been talking about these practices in the context of Tibetan Buddhism.
Right.
But is there anything here for someone who's not necessarily a Buddhist?
That's a great question, and one that a lot of people are asking these days.
Could these techniques be helpful in a more secular context, do you think?
I think so, yes.
How so?
Well, there's a growing interest in mindfulness and contemplative practices in Western psychology and even neuroscience.
So there's some scientific validation for these ancient techniques.
Definitely. Yeah. Research is showing the benefits of meditation for stress reduction, emotional regulation, and even cognitive enhancement.
That's pretty amazing.
It is, yeah.
It's like these practices were ahead of their time in a way.
In some ways, they were, but it's important to approach them with respect and understanding, recognizing their cultural and spiritual origins.
Right, not just appropriating them for our own purposes.
Exactly.
So if you're interested in exploring them in a secular context, what do you recommend?
Finding a qualified teacher who can bridge those worlds is crucial.
Someone who can translate the ancient wisdom into a language that resonates with modern life.
Exactly, yeah, and who can help you adapt the practices in a way that feels authentic and beneficial for you.
So it's not a one-size-fits-all approach.
Right, it's about finding what works for you and your unique needs.
Okay, so there's a lot to consider here.
Definitely.
The ethical foundations, the role of meditation and study, the importance of guidance, and the potential for these practices to be helpful even outside of a traditional Buddhist context.
It's a rich and complex tapestry, but well worth exploring.
And we haven't even scratched the surface of the rich symbolism and imagery that permeates Tibetan Buddhism.
Oh, the symbolism is fascinating.
Our sources are filled with references to mandalas, mantras, mudras.
It's a whole other layer of meaning and depth.
Right, it's almost overwhelming how much there is to explore.
It can be, but it's also incredibly inspiring.
I'm particularly intrigued by the references to specific locations in Tibet that are considered sacred and mysterious.
Oh, yes, those sacred places.
We're talking about Mount Kailash, Lake Manasarovar, places that have been pilgrimage sites for centuries.
They hold a special energy, a sense of the sacred that's palpable.
What makes these places so special? What is it about them that draws people from all over the world?
Well, Mount Kailash is considered a sacred mountain, a symbol of the cosmic axis.
The cosmic axis, wow.
It's a pilgrimage site for Buddhists, Hindus, and Jains alike.
Wow, so multiple religions revere this mountain.
Exactly. It speaks to the universal appeal of sacred places and their power to evoke a sense of awe and wonder.
Like they hold a kind of energy that transcends any specific religion or belief system.
Precisely. And Lake Manasarovar is equally revered, believed to be a source of purity and spiritual awakening.
And pilgrims often circumambulate the lake, performing prostrations and reciting mantras, right?
Yes, as a way of purifying themselves and connecting with the divine.
So these places are like physical manifestations of spiritual principles.
You could say that the landscape itself becomes imbued with meaning.
And the journey to these places is often just as important as the destination itself.
Absolutely.
Pilgrims undertake arduous journeys, walking for weeks or even months, facing harsh conditions and challenging terrain.
It's a test of physical and mental endurance, a way of pushing their limits and deepening their devotion.
Wow, that's incredible.
It is, yeah. It's a testament to the power of faith and the human spirit.
What motivates them to make such difficult journeys? What are they seeking?
It's a combination of devotion, purification, and the desire to connect with something larger than themselves.
Something beyond the everyday, something transcendent.
Exactly. It's about pushing their physical and mental limits to achieve a deeper level of spiritual understanding.
It's like these pilgrimages are a microcosm of the entire spiritual journey.
I like that. Yeah, it's a beautiful way to put it.
Facing challenges, pushing boundaries, and ultimately connecting with something profound.
And it highlights the transformative power of these practices, whether you're engaging with them in a remote mountain region or in the comfort of your own home.
So it's not about the location, it's about the inner journey.
Exactly. The outer journey can be a powerful metaphor for the inner transformation that's taking place.
Okay, so we've journeyed from the inner world of dreams to the outer world of sacred mountains and pilgrimages.
It's been quite a journey so far.
We've even touched on some pretty deep philosophical concepts.
We have.
But there's one thing that keeps popping up in our sources that I'm really curious to explore further.
What's that?
The significance of traditional Tibetan clothing and symbols. Things like the chuba and the endless knot.
Ah, yes, those are fascinating.
I'm fascinated by their deeper meaning. What do they represent?
Well, the chuba, that long robe you often see Tibetans wearing, is more than just clothing. It represents simplicity. detachment from material possessions.
So it's a reminder to let go of attachment to material things,
Exactly, yeah, and a reminder of the impermanence of things.
that everything is in constant flux and change.
Precisely.
So even clothing can have spiritual significance.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a way of embodying certain principles and reminding yourself of what's truly important in life.
And what about the endless knot? It's such a striking symbol. What's the meaning behind it?
It symbolizes the interconnectedness of all things, the idea that everything is in a constant state of flux and change.
I see. It's like a visual representation of the concept of interdependence.
Exactly. Yeah. It's also a reminder that our actions have consequences, rippling out and affecting everything around us.
Wow. It's amazing how these symbols can convey such profound ideas.
They're like visual shorthand for complex philosophical concepts.
And they're not just abstract symbols, right?
Right.
They're woven into the fabric of daily life in Tibet.
Exactly. Yeah, they're constant reminders of these deeper truths in subtle but powerful ways.
Makes you wonder if we could benefit from incorporating more symbolism and ritual into our own lives,
I think we could, yes.
even if we're not living in a traditional Tibetan context.
It's about finding ways to bring those reminders of mindfulness, compassion, and interconnectedness into our everyday routines.
Right, like creating little anchors for ourselves, little reminders of what's truly important amidst the chaos of modern life.
Exactly. Yeah, it's about creating a sacred space within ourselves and in our surroundings.
That brings us to another fascinating symbol that's often misunderstood, the Young Drung symbol, or swastika,
Ah, yes, the swastika.
which predates its use in Nazi Germany and has entirely different connotations in Tibetan Buddhism.
It's important to clarify that, yes.
Absolutely.
The swastika in Tibetan Buddhism represents auspiciousness, good fortune, and the cycle of birth and death.
So it's a powerful symbol of renewal and transformation.
Exactly, yeah. It's a reminder of the cyclical nature of existence.
So even a symbol that has been distorted in other contexts retains its original meaning within Tibetan Buddhism.
It's a reminder of the importance of understanding symbols within their proper cultural and historical context.
Right, not imposing our own interpretations or biases onto them.
Exactly, yeah. It's about looking beyond superficial appearances and delving into the deeper layers of meaning that these symbols hold.
Okay, so we've explored the significance of these places, these symbols, these reminders of a deeper reality that's woven into the fabric of Tibetan culture.
It's a rich and multifaceted tradition.
But there's one final element in our sources that I'd love to unpack before we wrap up this deep dive.
Okay.
The 10 Thenka paintings.
Ah, yes, the paintings are quite remarkable.
What are they? I've seen pictures, but I don't really understand what they represent.
They're a visual representation of the stages of spiritual development in Tibetan Buddhism.
So like a visual guide to the spiritual path.
Exactly. Each painting depicts a different stage, starting from the moment of death.
From death.
Yes, and continuing through the various realms of existence, culminating in enlightenment.
Wow, so it's like a visual roadmap of the spiritual journey.
Exactly. They're used as a tool for contemplation, helping people visualize the different stages of the journey and prepare themselves for what lies beyond this life.
So it's not just about this life, it's about what happens after death as well.
Yes, death is seen as a transition, not an end, in Tibetan Buddhism.
Right, it's just another stage in the ongoing cycle of birth, death, and rebirth.
Exactly. And the 10 Thenka paintings help people understand and navigate that process.
I can see how that would be incredibly powerful, especially in a culture where death is seen as a transition rather than an end.
It provides a framework for understanding the afterlife and preparing for it.
The 10 Thenka paintings offer a unique window into the Tibetan Buddhist worldview
They do, yes.
and its profound insights into the nature of life, death, and the journey of the soul.
They're a powerful reminder that our journey doesn't end with this life but continues on.
This deep dive has been a whirlwind of fascinating information and thought-provoking ideas.
It has been quite a journey.
We've covered dream yoga, deity yoga, Dzogchen, sacred places, symbols, and even the 10 Thenka paintings.
We've covered a lot of ground.
And through it all, we've seen how these practices, symbols, and beliefs intertwine to create a rich and complex tapestry of Tibetan Buddhist spirituality.
A tapestry that's both ancient and surprisingly relevant to our modern lives.
Absolutely. And as we've discussed, even without embracing the full religious framework, there are universal principles and insights within Tibetan Buddhism that can enrich our understanding of ourselves and the world around us.
It's a wisdom tradition that has much to offer, regardless of your background or beliefs.
So, where do we go from here? What should our listeners take away from this deep dive?
I think the most important takeaway is that we've only just scratched the surface.
There's so much more to learn, to explore, to experience.
There's a whole world of wisdom and practice waiting to be discovered.
That's the beauty of these deep dives.
It is.
They spark curiosity and invite us to keep exploring.
And to keep asking questions.
What stands out to you as a particularly intriguing or challenging aspect of what we've learned today?
For me, it's the emphasis on the transformative power of the mind. Through practices like dream yoga and Deity Yoga, you're essentially retraining your mind to perceive reality in a new way.
Right. And Dzogchen takes this even further, pointing to the inherent purity and clarity of our true nature.
It's a powerful message of hope and possibility.
It certainly is. It suggests that enlightenment, or at least a greater sense of peace and well-being, is not something unattainable, but rather something that lies dormant within each of us, waiting to be discovered.
It's an invitation to embark on a journey of self-discovery, to unlock our full potential, and to awaken to the true nature of reality.
That's an inspiring thought to end on. Yeah, it really is inspiring. But before we wrap up, there's one more thing I want to touch on.
Oh, yeah.
We've been talking about these practices as tools for personal transformation, right?
Right.
But our sources also hint at something bigger. Yeah, they talk about these practices impacting not just how we see ourselves, but how we see the world.
Ah, yes, the ripple effect.
Exactly. How we relate to others, how we engage with the world around us.
That's a crucial point. Tibetan Buddhism challenges some very fundamental assumptions we have about reality itself,
Okay, I'm all ears. What kind of assumptions are we talking about?
Think about how we typically experience the world.
Okay.
There's a sense of me as this solid, separate individual, and then there's everything out there.
Objects, events, other people.
Exactly.
Yeah, that classic subject-object division.
Right. It seems pretty basic, almost self-evident, right?
Yeah, totally.
But Tibetan Buddhism suggests that this is actually a limited perspective, an illusion created by the mind.
Okay, so not as solid and separate as we think.
Not at all. It emphasizes interdependence instead, the interconnectedness of all things.
Okay, so you, me, that tree outside.
Yeah.
We're not as separate as we seem.
Exactly. Yeah, we're all part of this intricate web of relationships.
So it's like shifting from me versus the world to seeing everything as part of this larger interconnected whole.
Exactly. And that has profound implications for how we interact with the world.
I can imagine. How so?
Well, if you see yourself as fundamentally connected to others, it naturally fosters more empathy and compassion.
That makes sense. It's harder to justify harming someone or acting selfishly if you see them as part of yourself, in a way.
Precisely. It challenges that egocentric view, that feeling of separation that's often the root of so much suffering.
It makes you wonder if these insights could be applied on a larger scale.
On a larger scale.
Yeah, to address some of the global challenges we face today.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Things like climate change, social injustice. Could this interconnectedness perspective help shift those conversations, you think?
Absolutely. If we cultivate a deeper understanding of our interconnectedness, not just as individuals, but as a species sharing this planet, it could lead to more responsible and compassionate action.
So it's not just about personal transformation, but also about transforming our relationship with the world around us.
Exactly, yeah.
Recognizing that our actions have these ripple effects that extend far beyond ourselves.
Precisely. And that's where the ethical dimension of Tibetan Buddhism comes full circle.
Full circle.
Yeah, compassion, nonviolence, right action. These aren't just abstract principles, they're guidelines for living in a way that benefits all beings, not just ourselves.
It's a powerful vision, a more interconnected and compassionate world.
It is, yeah, but it's not a utopian fantasy. It's a possibility that's open to us if we're willing to do the work.
The work of inner transformation,
Yeah.
and then letting that ripple outwards.
Exactly.
But I also wonder how these ancient practices, developed in a very different time and place, can really address the specific challenges of modern life.
That's a valid question. The world is a very different place now than it was centuries ago when these practices were developed.
Right? We're bombarded with information, constantly stimulated, always on the go.
It can be overwhelming, for sure.
It's easy to feel disconnected and lost in all the noise.
Yeah, but that's precisely why these practices are so relevant today.
How so?
The underlying principles, mindfulness, compassion, understanding the nature of the mind, these are timeless tools for navigating any challenging terrain, whether it's a remote mountain pass or the digital landscape of the 21st century.
So it's about adapting the tools to fit our current context.
Exactly. It requires a discerning and creative approach.
Taking what's valuable from these ancient traditions and applying it in a way that's meaningful for our lives today.
Precisely.
So maybe that's the takeaway for our listeners today.
What's that?
To approach these practices with an open mind, a willingness to learn, and a deep respect for their origins.
I think that's a great starting point, yes.
And to recognize that even if we don't embrace the full religious framework, there's so much to be gained from exploring the wisdom and insights that Tibetan Buddhism offers.
It's a path of self-discovery, a journey towards greater understanding, and a call to cultivate a more compassionate and interconnected world.
It's been an incredible journey just exploring these ideas with you today. To our listeners, we encourage you to keep diving deeper, to explore further, and to discover for yourselves the transformative potential of these Tibetan Buddhist practices.
Who knows, you might just uncover something within yourself that you never knew existed.
And maybe, just maybe, in doing so, you'll contribute to creating a world that's a little kinder, a little wiser, and a little more interconnected.
That's a beautiful aspiration.
Until next time, keep seeking, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.